goodness. I could do better than this person. Only the posers are on YouTube now.
Colleen.
Huh? Where am I? Is this Colleen's bookshelf? Oh no. I remember now. I was reincarnated as the YouTuber I used to watch in my past life. And if I don't make amazing YouTube videos from now on, Colleen gets the bad ending and exiled from the country. Well, I guess I'll get to work. Ah yes, the isekai genre. A pervasive plague on the manga, anime, and light novels industry. A genre that has become so overused that some publishers have even had to ban isekai from their author contests due to an overwhelming amount of entries. It has wormed its way into so much of Japanese nerd culture that it has almost become inescapable. You think you're watching an ordinary slice of life series about a sad, lonely person, and then boom, they get hit by a truck and now suddenly they're surrounded by 6 ladies of their choosing waiting at their beck and call. I'm sure 10 series just flashed before your eyes without me having even named anything specific. Long, incoherent series titles, harems of sexy lampposts, and apathetic otaku male leads have become the mainstay of the isekai genre. Contrary to popular belief though, this hasn't always been the case, and the stereotype is really only around a decade old. Isekai from the 2010s have been following trends that were carved out by a series like Sword Art Online, with its video game premise and outcast male lead. Although the author themselves doesn't see SAO as an isekai, it still created the trends. Even further, a series like Mushoku Tensei has boomed the reincarnation isekai genre. Because of this insane popularity of the series that came out in the 2010s, we have seen a huge shift in what we know isekai as today. Isekai has basically become a meme and the collective punching bag of the anime community. But like I said earlier, it wasn't always this way. Prior to this boom, isekai was dominated by female leads and fantasy worlds that didn't rely on these now staple tropes. We see modern isekai as being masculine power fantasies for down-on-their-luck men, but the isekais of the 80s and 90s were pretty much the complete opposite. Series like this were particularly popular in shoujo manga, with several famous ones coming out during this time. However, the shift in isekai stories has all but erased the storytelling of shoujo manga isekai that used to dominate, though this did give rise to a new kind of women-oriented isekai stories. Let's take a step back before I get ahead of myself here and discuss what isekai is in the first place for those who are uninitiated. The word isekai is a Japanese word that directly translates to different world or other world. Essentially, these are series where a character gets transported to a new and strange world. These settings can be anything from a fantasy world to a virtual reality or parallel universe. While isekai is seen to be a new phenomenon, isekai stories have been in Japanese folklore for centuries, such as the story of Urashima Taro, who saves a turtle and is transported on its back to a dragon palace. Despite the word isekai being a Japanese word, the concept of transporting people to different worlds isn't foreign to the West. We all probably grew up on series like Alice in Wonderland, The Chronic What Coals of Narnia, and hell, even Space Jam. My personal favorite Western isekai is The Page Master, about a pessimistic Macaulay Culkin who hits his head at the library and then wakes up to find himself in a cartoon. Honestly, this film might actually be the predecessor to modern isekai. I mean, it ticks all the stereotypical boxes, but I digress. Isekai itself isn't really anything new as a genre, we just now have a new catchy word to describe it. The premise of isekai has been around for centuries, but we do have a distinct flavor of isekai that we get now. Some of these tropes are the ones that I mentioned earlier, like harems, neat male leads and long series titles. Along with these stereotypes, you also have the new reincarnation trope. This is where a character gets killed, usually by a truck, and is sent to, usually, a piece of media that they liked in their past life. The use of this trope is an easy way to have the character already know everything about the world that they're in, where they can adjust pretty quickly, and the author doesn't have to spend time on training arcs. It is these 4 tropes paired with things like video game mechanics, overpowered protagonists, and slimes. Lots and lots of slimes that make isekai so recognizable. This is most likely the reason that we don't often associate shoujo manga that were popular in the 90s to this type of genre. Series made before this popular term was coined were rather referred to as trapped in another world. This type of genre doesn't adhere to the stereotypical standards of isekai we have now, as characters can find themselves in different time periods. For example, manga that came out during this time would include the very popular shoujo series Red River and the shonen series Inuyasha, both of which involve characters being transported to different eras of the world where magic or demons exist. Also of note is that many series before the 2010s isekai would allow the characters to go back and forth between worlds, or at the very least, they did have the option to return. The big reason we had a surge of shoujo manga in the trapped in another world category during the 90s would probably be because of 2 series. From Far Away, which started serializing in September of 1991, and Fushigi Yugi, which started serializing in December of the same year. Both of these manga were insanely popular in Japan upon their releases, and are still widely regarded to this day. From Far Away is currently celebrating its 30th anniversary with a shop in Japan, and Fushigi Yugi is still publishing spin-off series from the original run. Looking at both, you can definitely pick out the defining traits of this era of isekai manga and how they would differ from the series that we get now. To start, we have From Far Away, which is about a high school girl named Noriko who gets caught in a bomb explosion. That's right, a bomb. None of your tired and played out truck nonsense, a bomb. Try telling me that shoujo isn't hardcore now. Anyway, she gets caught in an explosion and transported to a world that is completely unfamiliar to her. When Noriko wakes up, she finds herself in a forest with strange creatures that begin to attack her. But before they can kill her, a mysterious man appears to save her. Noriko is unable to understand him because he speaks a different language from her. When the two escape the forest, Noriko tries to bridge that gap and learn the man's name. Eventually, they come to an understanding, and he tells her that his name is Izark. Izark is a lone traveler that was sent to the forest to obtain something called the Awakening. It is said that the Awakening would bring great calamity to the world, which would unleash the evil of the Sky Demon. This being is wanted by many different groups in this universe to bring soul power to their leaders. So, to Izark's surprise, when he arrives in the forest, he finds Noriko, who is just a scared girl. Despite being the Awakening, he decides to protect her, and the two embark together, with Noriko learning the secrets of this land. One of the big takeaways of this series is the coming-of-age themes and messaging, since this type of storytelling is pretty much guaranteed in this genre. Noriko is just a normal girl stuck in a fantastical world with no abilities or powers. She's never meant to feel like she's worthless, but rather constantly being told that she is fine the way she is. Her inability to be strong is nothing to be ashamed of, because she has her own skill set in this world that make her powerful in her own way. Although Noriko is a normal teenage girl, the series still utilizes the chosen one trope, since most trapped in another world media do use this. She is special, and therefore she is needed to be in this world. Unlike isekai of today though, she didn't have previous knowledge of this world to essentially cheat her way through. Noriko must struggle to find her place in this new universe, as well as figuring out the rules of their language and cultures. The fact that there's no cheat sheet for her furthers the self-empowerment themes of the series. We see Noriko gaining confidence, becoming more self-assured, and you get a real sense for how far she's come since the beginning. This type of storytelling isn't often seen in modern isekai, as many characters will get transported or reincarnated into places that they have previous knowledge of. Which isn't to say these stories are less than, but it just goes to show the difference of what the stories used to be about. From Far Away is a great example of how isekai manga used to be made, but I wouldn't say the series itself was really a game changer for the genre. There's many aspects of this manga that pull from RPG or D&D settings, yet it still feels pretty unique even looking back on it today. Rather than inspiring isekai, I would say it probably inspired creators in the fantasy or sci-fi genre, especially considering that From Far Away was a winner of the 35th Seiyun Award, which goes to speculative fiction. Where the starting point for women-oriented isekai really lies is with the other shoujo manga that I mentioned. This is what I will now be calling the 6 Degrees of Fushigi Yugi. Fushigi Yugi is an 18-volume shoujo manga series by Yu Watase that has spawned several spin-offs, a light novel series, an anime, video games, live actions, and so on. The story follows two middle school girls, Miyaka and Yui, who are struggling with the usual problems at that age. What high school to go to, how to juggle school life with friendships, and family pressure. Upon a visit to the library, they stumble upon a book called The Universe of the Four Gods. This book is set in ancient China, and once opened, pulls Miyaka and Yui into the world of the book. The two are put in danger almost immediately, but get help from a boy called Tamahome who saves them. I've always said Tamahome, it's probably wrong. After which, Yui gets pulled back out of the book and leaves Miyaka to her own devices. Miyaka needs to find a way to leave the book, but encounters the Emperor, who believes her to be the land's priestess of the protector god Suzaku. The priestess is said to be the one to find all of these celestial warriors, and once found, they will summon the god Suzaku to grant their wishes. Since Miyaka would be able to wish to return home, she takes on this task to find the 7 celestial warriors. Unbeknownst to Miyaka during this time, Yui has entered back into the book. At first, she just wanted to help her friend exit the book, but due to jealousy, was manipulated and became a rival priestess. The two began to fight against each other to collect the celestial warriors first and had the chance to have their wishes granted. Obviously, just by nature of being so insanely popular, Fushigi Yugi set a precedent for shoujo series after its release. Its popularity brought more Trapped in Another World manga with it, like Magic Knight Rayearth or Yu Watase's other series, Alice 19th. Fushigi Yugi was a lot of people's introduction to this type of genre, as well as being the one to popularize the reverse harems. Another notable aspect of this manga is that the main characters are friends turned rivals who fight against each other. This will be important later. The combination of all of these components in the series is where we can really start to see the birth of the female isekai that we have today. Thanks to Fushigi Yugi being the inspiration for one of the first otome games of its kind, Angelique. Otome games are essentially the shoujo manga of video games. They target the female demographic and have taken a lot of the same aesthetic qualities from these manga too. Since shoujo manga predates otome games, this was used on purpose to help guide the familiar reader into the world of video games. Angelique is widely seen as the first otome game of its kind, being created in 1994 by an all-female staff. The game features European fantasy settings and a bishin and a harem of boys that you can romance. Let's see if this sounds a little familiar to you. The premise of Angelique is about a holy land presided over by a queen and her 9 guardians. The queen wants a successor to the throne and selects 2 girls from a girls' academy. The 2 girls are pitted against each other to make a capable nation, and whoever wins gets the crown. Along the way, they can also choose to romance any of the 9 guardians. Sound like something else we just talked about? Yeah, that premise sounds just a little bit familiar to a manga series that was created 3 years prior. I mean, look at the art for both of them as well. You would probably get these confused. Not like I'm shouting plagiarism, but it is pretty clear that the inspiration for Angelique largely came from Fushigi Yugi. Let's circle back to that bit that I said was important later about the dynamic between Miyaka and Yui and Fushigi Yugi now. Yui is seen to be Miyaka's rival in love, as well as being her rival in her quest to get the wishes granted. This rivalry in the series is most likely what spawned a very similar dynamic between the girls and Angelique. The titular Angelique and her antagonist of sorts, Rosalia, are opposing parties that are fighting against each other to win. What unexpectedly came from this rivalry in the game, though, was the immense popularity of Rosalia's character. She was so loved by the fans of this game that they actually wish she was playable, and this did happen years later with a sequel, Angelique Duet, where you could play Rosalia. The love shown to the rival character in Angelique spawned a plethora of fan fiction on the site Let's Become Novelists, or Naro for short. Naro is a site for self-published web novels that was created in 2004 and became a popular place to post fan fiction. Oh, and also web novels, like the name suggests, but obviously, fanfic was the more popular one. The people who wrote these fanfics about Rosalia desperately wanted her to be the good guy or the protagonist in the game. If anyone here is familiar with the Star Kid musical Twisted, it's in that same sense where you imagine the antagonist as the protagonist. In the specific case of Angelique, though, Rosalia does become your friend by the end of the game. She was never like pure evil or anything. She just wanted to be the best. She wanted to win. So with this one, we are at the third degree of Fushigi Yugi. We have Fushigi Yugi bringing the advent of otome games, which brought on the love of an antagonist character. In tandem, during the same time of fanfic being made about Rosalia on Naro, you have transportation fanfic on the rise as well. This is thanks to the popularity of a series called The Familiar of Zero, where a character gets transported to a fantasy world thanks to the main heroine. The use of transportation magic was such easy fodder for fanfics that series with this premise were everywhere on Naro. However, fanfic isn't what the site wanted to be known for, and they did end up banning it in 2012. This clearly wouldn't stop fanfic authors, because nothing can stop a fanfic author. They found a workaround where they could allude to known IPs without mentioning the names by using transportation magic in their series. Thus, the isekai genre was born. The year is now 2013. Naro is booming. Sword Art Online is out, and one of the most notable reincarnation series for shoujo appears on the site. In true isekai fashion, the title is I Will Live with Humility and Dependability as My Motto. This is a series where a girl realizes she was reincarnated as the antagonist character in a shoujo manga she used to read in her past life, You Are My Dolce. The main character remembers that at the end of the series, the bully character faces retribution from the Emperor, and her family falls to ruin. Obviously, she wouldn't want this bad ending to come to pass, so she does everything she can to change how her story ends. In this novel series, you can not only just see the hints of shoujo manga that are prevalent, but also the reversal of heroines as well. The You Are My Dolce manga that the main character gets reincarnated to is very similar to series like Candy Candy, and especially Boys Over Flowers. While the antagonist becoming the protagonist comes from the popularity of Rosalia, like we spoke about just a little bit ago. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's all come together now.
I can't do a Crunk voice. There were a handful of villainess series before 2013, but not many were reincarnation series. It wasn't until I Will Live with Humility that it became a full-on trend. The amount of villainess novels that sprung up after 2013 started to become in the thousands, and I Will Live with Humility hit #2 rank on Naro. This series was clearly the inspiration for many people going forward, with villainesses being the main focus. This is how we end up at our 6th degree of Fushigi Yugi. With the new rise of villainess isekai, we started seeing the characters getting reincarnated into novels and manga. However, there was one type of media that is pretty unique to Japan, as that's where it originates. Otome games. The beginning of otome game reincarnation series started to crop up around the same time as I Will Live with Humility although none of them had the same impact as that series did. There were clearly a few here and there in 2012, but it wasn't until 2014 that these types of novels started to hit their stride and become the norm for shoujo isekai. This due to the popularity of what I think has become the villainess reincarnation otome game series, My Next Life as a Villainess. The novel series that culminates all the things I have previously talked about into one giant ball of isekai madness. My Next Life as a Villainess, or as it's nicknamed, Hamefura, has basically become the quintessential reincarnation series for female-led isekai. The story is about a duke's daughter, Katarina, who when she was young, hits her head on a rock and gains memories of her past life. She remembers that she used to be an otaku teenage girl that played an otome game called Fortune Lover, which she finds herself in now. Not only that, but she was reincarnated as the villainess in this otome game. To keep from getting the bad ending in the game where she ends up dead or exiled to another country, she tries to change her destiny. All of these tropes are consistently used in villainess isekai to this day, with otome game reincarnations being more prevalent than ever. So let's break this down to see how we got here. First, Fushigi Yugi became popular in 1991 for its fantasy isekai setting, with reverse harems and rivaling friends. Second, Fushigi Yugi was the inspiration for the first otome game of its kind, Angelique. Third, Angelique had rivaling characters, and the antagonist Rosalia grew in popularity with many wanting her to be playable, and due to this, many fanfics of Rosalia popped up on Naro. Fourth, Naro users during this time were incorporating transportation magic in their fanfics due to the popularity of the familiar of Zero. Fifth, reincarnation series were on the rise, and the most popular for shoujo isekai was I will live with humility and dependability as my motto, which popularized antagonists becoming protagonists. Sixth, this series led to others being made like it after 2013, and particularly My Next Life as a Villainess was the breakout star of the shoujo reincarnation otome villainess pipeline. And that is how we got shoujo isekai today. Thanks, Fushigi Yugi. I'm sure there's a lot I've missed for the steps in between the 6 degrees, but the general idea is still there. Obviously, there were series that most likely inspired the most popular of these web novels that just haven't gotten their dues. It is hard to pin them down though, as many series have been deleted off of the site, and lots of links are broken. I wouldn't claim any of the series that I mentioned as the first ones, but they are the most notable with how popular they were. Also, their popularity started the trends, even if they themselves weren't the first. I think it's pretty cool that while shoujo isekai that an old person like me used to love aren't made the same way, they clearly are what helped inspire the shoujo isekai we have today. While I love isekai that have coming-of-age stories and fantasy worlds, the reincarnation series have a charm all their own. Getting to see once baddies become baddies. Oh, I couldn't even take that seriously. What a stupid line. Why did I write that? It's a fun way of watching a character who uses their wits and knowledge to outsmart a system that was rigged against them. Shoujo isekai has changed, but the bones of what once was are still there. As popularity continues to grow for these web novels, new tropes and new dynamics will continue to pile on top of what we once knew as shoujo isekai of the 90s.